In my last video, I captured some really atmospheric and stunning woodland photos. There was rain, low cloud, mist, a little bit of everything. It was really fantastic. In this video, I'm going to be jumping into Lightroom with one of those photos, and I'm going to be showing you how I edit the photo from beginning to end. Step by step, we'll take the raw file and we'll turn it from something flat into something moody, beautiful, and atmospheric. Let's jump right in. Okay, so we're going to start by jumping into Lightroom, and we're going to start off with this shot. So this is one of my woodland shots from my most recent YouTube upload where I'm up in the summer woodlands and there's all lots of low cloud. It's an absolutely beautiful morning. It was raining, it was mist, it was low cloud. It was fantastic. Now, these conditions not only make the scene more interesting, but it certainly helps to make most of the summer season, which we all know isn't the greatest for landscape photography. Now, as it stands, straight out of the camera, it is a lovely shot and I'm very happy with it, but there are a few bits of processing that we can do to make it even better. So firstly, we're going to look at our profiles in the development modules. We're going to start from the top and work our way down. There are a couple of different profiles I like to use for my woodland shots. I like my linear profiles because it does soften it down. I'm going to be going for a painterly vibe and a softer vibe with this. Now, I normally like to use linear Nikon, Adobe Standard, Adobe Neutral for these. So we also like to use camera matching ones. So if you click on this little button here, it shows the profiles and there's all different ones. So you got Adobe Raw where your normal profiles are. And then you also got my linear profile, which I've added in myself. Artistic ones, adaptive ones, and then camera matching ones here as well. So if you hover over them, it'll change the image accordingly. It's quite a nice one, the flat one. And I go for neutral because it's got a little bit of a pop in the colors as well, but it's not too much. So we selected that one and we're closing it down. Right. Now, as it's summer, I do want to make sure that the photo isn't too cold and blue looking. So I'm going to adjust the white balance slightly, bring it up ever so slightly. Again, don't be afraid to do extremes to see what it's doing, but we don't want it to be too cold. So just bring it up ever so slightly, like so. That's nice. And to help remove some of these, I think 20 is possibly quite all right there with the purple or magenta haze. Yeah, we don't want it too much. Otherwise it goes too green and hazy there. Let's take it away up to about 20 where it was. Nice. Okay. Once I've set my profile and sorted out the white balance, I like to move on to the tone stage, which is really about setting the mood and making sure that the photo has that soft painterly feel right from the beginning. Now, I'm quite actually happy with the exposure of the photo as it is. If we look at the histogram, it shows us that it doesn't need a great deal of... We have got some peaking up here, but that's nothing that can't be sorted now. It's a good balance right across the frame. So we're going to open up the shadows a little bit to help reveal some of the textures that might be slightly hidden in here. We're not going to go crazy with it. So we're going to increase the contrast slightly. So by increasing the contrast, we can see all the changes made by doing extremes. So if we wiggle it back and forth, great stuff. So that's where it was. Just move it up ever so slightly. Just add a little bit of contrast to it. Nice. And we can turn it on, and instantly you can see that it's gone from that blue color, which wasn't necessarily noted as much before, but when you put the adjustments on, you can see that it's warmed it up quite a good amount. Maybe a little bit too much. No, that's fine. Let's stick with that. That's absolutely fine. So like I said, now with the highlights, we've got these highlights up here kicking in a little bit. So we're just going to drop them down a smidge. We're going to adjust them with a mask later. So that's absolutely easier to do. We can drop our highlights a little bit again, do extremes, just bring back some of the trees up on the right hand side of the photo. You can see the trees are coming out a little bit more. So we're going to, a light adjustment there about there. That's nice. We're going to keep everything else pretty much as is. We're going to add a little bit of clarity. Again, see, we don't want it looking too over the top, but just a little bit of clarity adds that texture back in to the photo overall. So these global adjustments are going to make a great difference when we're adding a few more finer details later. So with the vibrance, I'm going to drop the vibrance down a little bit because it's looking a little bit too over the top with the greens. So what we're going to do now is do that. So that was before. and that's after. And instantly, I think we can all agree that that is looking much, much better. So next, move on to the tone curve. As with most painterly edits, and I think almost any woodland photographer knows that to get this painterly effect, that you take off your whites and your blacks a little bit, so you do drop them down from the top and the bottom there accordingly in your tone curve. Not too much, and then it's a little subtle esque, really subtle. Possibly a bit too much there. It's quite nice. What does that look like before and after? Oop. So you can see it's taking the highlights out already with that, without making too much alterations. But the true blacks aren't showing in the shadows, and the whites aren't either. So most paintings that you will see in the world very rarely will have a black and white purity to them. They use lots more pastel-y. So if we think about watercolors, for example, you will rarely see a jet black or a super bright white that's in them. It's more about soft mid-tones and gentle transitions. So using this tones curve will lift the blacks slightly and will hold on the whites as well, so nothing at all feels blown out. And instantly, I think we can see it's looking much, much better. So the real goal here has been to pull everything into a softer tonal range instead of hard edges between light and dark. I wanted to create a smoother, softer, balanced foundation that we can build with our color and masking as well. So let's move on to our color work. So one of the most important parts of creating that painterly woodland look is the colors. So when we're bringing in woodland photos into Lightroom, the greens straight out of the camera, generally they are too strong. They can look a little bit flat and artificial, and that isn't what we want. So what we're going to do is head to this color mixer. Where's my mouse? There it is. So we move into the color mixer. Let's minimize the tone curve there. Now, as it's a summer photo and the leaves and the grass is the most prominent, I like to start with the greens. So instead of leaving them as really, really bright, I like to shift the hue slightly so they fall into the more olivey tones. So we take our green slider and we just drop it down ever so much. Not too much. And again, don't be afraid to turn on and off. So you can see that it's quite green there, and then becoming a little bit more pea green almost, down to an olivey green, which is quite nice. And the olivey sort of greens, they are a lot more softer and much more natural in woodland photography. That was a subtle change, but it instantly makes the scene look less artificial and a lot more believable as well. So with the yellows, we need to balance some of them out as well. Now, foliage often has yellow mixed into it, and if we don't control it too much, it can be a bit too vibrant and distracting. So let's reduce the yellow just a touch, enough to tone it down without losing that warmth as well. So matching this green, we're going to drop the yellow to roughly the same down there, maybe a little bit more on that green as well. Let's try 15 on both. Again, as you can see, so we're turning that off and the greens are quite green. As nice as they sort of look, I think it looks much better and much more natural when we've made these yellow adjustments here. So now, once you soften those greens and yellows a little bit, we can add a little bit more life back by adding saturation a little bit more selectively by boosting the greens. We can make the leaves pop a little bit, but then I'll also reduce the blues and the purples. These will often sneak into these shadows, and if they're left too strong, they can leave unwanted cool tones as well. So boost that there as well. Nice, but I quite like the look of that now. Also add a little bit of luminance to the greens as well. After that, I'll adjust the luminance of the greens. So by making them a little bit brighter, the leaves that catch the light in a soft glow and help separate them from the darker trunks in the background. With the color grading, we can do the usual split toning if wanted. We may not want to do it, so we can add cooler shadows, drop the ever so slight shadows down there, and in the highlights, warm them up a little bit. I'm not sure I'm going to do it on this one because I think it's going to just sort of wash everything out a little bit too much. Yeah, I don't like that one. So we're going to reset them and leave out the color grading. I'm not interested in that. So detail. Now, I shot this at quite a high ISO of 3200. So as you can see, there's quite a bit of noise going on here. It was handheld as well. So I'm not too... It could have been technically stronger photo in the detail, but I didn't have a tripod. It was handheld. It was raining. Let's denoise it. That's what it's here for. Okay, so now the denoise is done, we zoom in and have a look. Yeah, let it draw it a little bit. We can see that it's taken out a lot of the noise and it hasn't affected anything. But catch it, the computer. No, it hasn't taken any of the detail out. We'll drop that down just slightly. Maybe it's done it a bit too much. We don't want to flatten the image too much. We want the detail to be there. And noise isn't a problem. It's just there was a bit too much noise, that's all. So, right, that's great. So we've done the detail. Lens corrections. I generally always put my lens corrections on. It doesn't, I mean, is it essential? Probably not. I think it's personal preference, but the option's there. Let's use it. So we're not going to transfer no lens, but calibration. One of the final things we move on to here, and is one of the most important parts. This is where the magic really, really happens, because calibration works right out at a raw processing level. So if we open this up, we can adjust the blue primary hue to separate these greens even further. So if I slide it one way, the greens change color completely, which almost looks quite autumnal and quite nice, which is okay. Or we can make it look truly vulgar by moving it all the way up to the right-hand side there. So, squatting that up back there. So this is the direction we wanted. So as you can see now, by dropping that down there, the tree trunks shift into this sort of olivey tone, while the leaves stay lush and vibrant. So the separation adds depth, a bit of complexity, and the forest feels layered instead of being a bit more of a flat, washy green. So if we turn that on and off, you can see there's quite a green hint. We probably go even a little bit more on there, maybe. Oop. Got to be careful not to overdo it, because you can get a little bit eager with these things. So everything's quite green. And now we've got the greens, but the trees and the trunks are separated a lot more as well. Very nice too. So with these greens here, first of all, let's saturate that a little bit more, John. Slightly. We're going to just boost the greens a little bit with the hue. And then with the saturation, just a little bit as well. And with our reds, we want the trunks to be a little bit more prominent. So this is where we can come in with the tree trunks. Again, don't be afraid to do extremes. As you can see how much it's affecting the trees. But we don't want it to look too vulgar and insipid. We want to move it down slightly. Like so. Now with those three little bars being adjusted there, you can see how much of a difference that's made. It's a much more natural looking photo. That red might be a little bit too much. Much better. I think those barks, the bark on the tree is looking much better and more realistic, whereas before I think everything's a little bit too green. I like it. Very, very nice. So by carefully controlling the greens and balancing these yellows and using calibration to separate the tones, this woodland becomes much softer, richer, and much more atmospheric. It's no longer just a photo of trees. It takes on that painterly, timeless classic look that I'm always aiming to get. Nice. So next I'm going to add a little bit of masking. So if we go up here and open our masks. Now I'm going to use radial gradients. I'm going to be intersecting them with the luminance range, because I really only want to be adding it to the haze that's in the photo. So if we click on radial gradient, and just draw one for it to start with, and then we can move it. So we'll move it up here because that's quite nice. We may do two, because we've got a bright patch here and we've got a brighter patch over here. So we'll bring that down as well, because we're going to be covering the haze area. So I'm happy with that. So move up to here where your little three dots are. If you click on that, intersect mask with luminance range. So then you get your little teeth pipette. You can do this in two ways. You can click on here or you can drag here. I like to click on here first. As you can see, the mask is now just affecting the luminance area of the radial gradient. But we can expand it a bit further because of the mist that we've got, and we can feather it out a little bit more as well. Like so. Nice. So one of the only things that we really do in here is add a little bit of detail and contrast. So the contrast is quite nice if we boost that there. But in the effects tab, we've got clarity. Boost the clarity slightly, but negative dehaze. Oh, not too much. To bring that down a smidgen. How much texture do we want? Drop the texture slightly as well to soften up. that. So if we turn that on and off, we can see that particularly in the lower portion, it's just boosting the lower portion of the radial gradient, it's boosting the misty sort of effect that's going on there as well, which I quite like. That's nice. So we'll do another one over here, radial gradient. Intersect it with the luminance range, and if we click on my little teeth pipette coming up to there we are. Again, so make these ever so slight adjustments. We don't need to be going too crazy with it because we want it to be as natural as possible. Oh, not too much of that there. So how does that look? Oh, how does that look? Getting subtle tones, bringing in that misty element, quite nice. Now the bottom left of this photo is looking a little bit empty. We got a lot going on here, but this patch here is a little bit bland. So I'm going to put a linear gradient, up here. And we're going to darken it down to sort of detract the eye slightly and make sure that the rest of the photo is more important. This isn't maybe a bit too much there. So this isn't about removing this element, it's just making sure that the rest of the photo takes center stage then, I suppose. So we'll adjust these slightly, drop down the shadows. Okay, that's quite nice. So it darkens it down and draws attention to everything else. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is masking out these trees because I want some detail and texture in some of these elements here. So we can create a subject mask here. You can use the landscape mask, but I find that it doesn't always select things when the photo is quite detailed and there's lots going on. I don't find that it selects things as well as I would like, but that's fine. They're working on these things all the time. So again, it's come up with sky, vegetation, just covering everything, a natural ground. That might be useful later because I want to do the path. In fact, we'll do the path now. So natural ground, create mask. Because I wanted to bring the path out slightly because it felt a little bit lost. Because I don't want it to overtake the scene, but I still want it to be part of leading the eye in. Try and separate it out slightly there. So how's that looking there now? Again, it's just got a bit more contrast and color and range in it, so it's not being lost in the photo. I want that to draw the eye through the photo a little bit. Okay, better. All right, so back to the tree. So this time I'm going to use an object mask. So make sure you're selecting the rectangle. We're going to draw around it and hopefully it'll pick up 90% of what the tree is. It might, maybe more, should be quite good. There we are, perfect. So it's identified that tree. So we're going to move in, and all I want to do is clarity, increase the clarity, a little bit of texture. We'll leave the TH as it is, so we're going to zoom in on that a little bit. So we can see what we're really doing here. So if we turn that off, you can see it's quite soft. And now there's a little bit more structure and detail in there as well. So I only really want to do it to that tree because let's zoom back out. Oh, too much. Right. Okay, so I'm quite happy with that as it looks now. So let's have a look at a quick before and after section. So we've got before on the left-hand side, and there we are. It took a little time, but as you can see, the differences that have been made, it looks much more natural. It's amazing how much green was in the photo beforehand, and now it just looks like a much more natural woodland. To me, anyway, all these edits and processes are all about making your changes and how you think you saw the photo and how you want it to look. Very nice. I'm very happy with that. So the only thing left to do now is jump into Photoshop. So we're going to right click, edit in, opens a smart object in Photoshop. So we're going to be adding the autumn effect here, which is a nice, quick and simple way to add a misty glow and enhance the photo just that a little bit. The icing on the cake, we'll call it. And I've done a video previously on how to do this, so I'll stick the link up there as well, so you can have a look at that individually if you are interested in looking at it in a little bit more detail. So we have our photo, and all we're going to be doing is Control J to duplicate that layer. I only opened it as a smart object because if you want to go in and make a few other changes, you can, but there's more of a force of habit. So we're going to rasterize that layer there. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. Do a nice curves adjustment layer. We only want it to affect the layer below. Do this. Like I said, I've done all this in a previous YouTube video, which the link is here. So please do feel free to have a look at that in a bit more detail if you want to see what I'm doing with a bit more description as well. So that's nice. So then we move that down to around 20%. How is that looking? And just affect the lighter areas up the top as well. That's fine. We'll just use those sections. That's quite nice. So we'll add a mask to that as well. So yeah, we just added this little soft range to everything here as well. So there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this video today and where we've taken everything from beginning to end in the photo. I may have rushed a few little bits, but I'm sure we can come back to this and do this again as well. So please do drop any questions that you've got in the comments, and hopefully we'll see you soon. Thank you.